How's it going, YouTube? Coming in today with another video, and today, guys, what the brand new is going to be where to hand trap. This is going to be a rather long one, and I do hope that you enjoy. If you haven't already checked out my sponsors over at Imperium, Duelist, Dragonshield, Gem, Cloud, REW, Grimoire, and ChainLink, definitely go ahead and check them out down below in the description. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, definitely go ahead and subscribe. Without further ado, let's go ahead and hop right on into the video. The first one today is going to be Gimmick Puppet. I made a big announcement on YouTube and Twitter on how to stop this deck, but let's go ahead and talk about this while we're here. So you can definitely go ahead and DD Crow the Argent Forest. This card is insane. They can loop this card. This is what gives you enough to kill your opponent on the FTK. So you also want to cut off this execute right here, because this is what allows you to search the Argent Forest. Some people are playing 2 Argent now, but it was 1 for a long time. You still want to get rid of it so your opponent can't keep looping this on you. You can Ghost Ogre the Dreadful Dolls. Again, we're just trying to make sure that our opponent does not get the extra body on our board. You can also Bell, which is equally very good. Droll is really important against this deck. You'll see a little Droll icon up here when it's really good against the deck. So definitely make sure that you're paying attention to that when it comes around. Ash onto the Rogue Doll is really nice too. This card's kind of insane. You want to go ahead and stop this. But most importantly, just make sure you go ahead and stop this one right here. And if you have the DD Crow, to get rid of the Argent Force, or else you will get FDK'd. Centurion Whitewood. So again, there's gonna be some empty spaces here when things aren't not that good. You can definitely like Bell or Crow whenever your opponent tries to put back a Synchro to like bring back one of the White Forest monsters. But you're not realistically siding in these cards against this matchup, so it's not something that you really want to have. Ghost Ogre onto the effect of Crimson Dragon is really strong. I definitely recommend this one. This is real nice. Just get it out of the game. Especially when your opponent tries to Blazar you in turn 0, you can go ahead and just get rid of this, which is nice. The other thing is Ash onto the LZ, and then any kind of negation you have onto the Chimera is going to be A-OK. This is just another way to get into their engine. It could just be Auxilia, so this could be Chimera or Auxilia. It depends on which route they take, if they go directly for this or they go for the 12 first. But just make sure that you cut off access to the engine as much as possible. Labrynth, so you're going to be DD Crowing onto the target of rollback, because if you DD Crow the target of rollback, then rollback won't resolve because it checks on resolution. Bell or Ash onto either of the traps is A-OK. You can only Bell the Big Welcome, but you can Ash either, so that's fine. And then Ghost Mourner, Veiler, Imperm onto Ariana. This never really changes. If you have 2, then you can go ahead and just hit the sequence instead, which is fine. But you definitely want to make sure that you go ahead and get rid of these for sure. The Ariana or the sequence are going to be huge for the deck. Now the deck can put up Appaloosa, which is really annoying because of the Fiendsmith cards. They're also going to go off the sequence into Aerial Eater to dump the Ariana to be able to do their combo off just one Fiendsmith. So definitely make sure that you're weary of that. Ritual Beast, this is another deck that you really want to pay attention to. You can Bell the effect of Lara or Zephyrin Pelika, same with Crow under the target of either of them, just to make sure your opponent can't get to another body that they want to get to. Ghost Ogre onto the Inheritance, to make sure that you're cutting off a really good extension for your opponent. Any kind of Ash or negation you have onto the Nemesis cards to stop the Protoss or Colossus from coming out is going to be really important. But if you don't want to right away, if your opponent like starts off with the Kanahawk, definitely go ahead and just hit the Kanahawk, which is fine. It really depends on like how they open, but just go ahead and hit the Kanahawk or just wait for the Nemesis stuff. Either way, I think that you're better off either way. But just keep that in mind moving forward. Now, so Mermail is a deck that's coming out in Rhoda that's already been out, but we're getting the new card for it. Couple things I want to talk about with this. So in the TCG, we're almost always going to be playing the Spot Frog and the Mirror Mage package just because it's too free. This is something that you just want to DD Crow the Mirror Mage when they use the effect of the spell to reborn the Mirror Mage to cut off the early access to Toad. You can Bell the effect of an enemy, or you can Ogre the effect of an enemy because it has to summon to the arrow. So that's really impactful. They also don't add anything back because you don't really play Marincess cards. You want to Ash the Bodyguards. This card is really insane. I'll be making a video about what the Mermail deck does and how it does it moving forward in a few days. There is a combo now where off Prince, instead of dumping Dragoon, you dump this to go ahead and get a summon out of your deck. So right when your opponent goes Prince, dump this, you Ash this effect in Grave, and it's a huge choke point. Now, any kind of negation onto Diva, your opponent's only going to be on one Diva usually, because Diva got cut down real hard in this deck because there's a lot of other things that you can do. It's also better to summon Prince right now. But at the same time, make sure you stop Diva, because one Diva is like crazy combo. Drill is also very good. I saw a couple combos with like 3 Toad playing this card. This is so cope, I'm not even concerned about it. Like if they're playing this build, they're probably losing anyway. Because they play so many of the bad Mermail cards just to do this, like they're going to brick. Now, Mermail plays a lot like Tier in a sense that you can't really play Handtrap, so you have to play like all gas. But you gotta make sure you're playing like decent cards that can actually do things on their own. Like we're going into Area, which is a crazy card. It turns on like any water effect. The end board is like 6 or 7 interruptions layered, so you want to make sure that you're ready for that as well. This build is usually a lot worse, but like the standard build will be a lot better, and I'll talk about that in my video coming up, so I hope that you're ready for that as well. Madolche. So you want to Ogre the Salam. This card's just obnoxious, getting to the traps and the additional normals and whatnot, so just want to make sure this is gone as soon as possible. You can DD Crow the target of Hoot Cake. I like this one a lot more than the Exceed, but a lot of times the first play your opponent's going to do is go into the Exceed and then go ahead and try to shuffle one back the deck. So you can go ahead and just DD Crow the target of the Exceed so your opponent can't pop off. You can Bell or Ash the Seedling or any of the Vernicelfs if you want. You can also just Bell the effect of the Xyz as well, which again is still just as good. But Ash onto the Petting Sister is usually a lot better in my opinion. Then you can Bell any of the Vernicelf cards. And then any kind of negation onto the Link 3 is usually preferred. But if my opponent just normal summons an Angeli, I'm probably just going to Veiler Impermanent all the time. So it really depends on what you think they have and what you think they could have. So it's really important just to understand what all these cards do. Like your opponent can't use the Mess and Gelato unless they have a Beast on board, which is like Hoot Cake or the Link 3, right? So just make sure you're reading the cards thoroughly because there's a lot of text on them, and you just want to make sure that everything is going to go correct in your game. Now, Spright, the Ibly isn't exactly the most popular, but this is the only thing I could even imagine belling in this deck. But at the same time, I could see this being a little bit more popular post-side. It's really strong. Again, just hitting the Mirror Mage off of the effect to revive. Ghost Ogre onto Gigantic. If your opponent's going second, however, and they have the Mosquito, I'm probably just going to wait with Ogre on the Mosquito because at that point you don't die, which is the most important thing. Ashing Starter, and then any negation you have on the Jet. If it's early and your opponent goes like Nimble, summon Nimble, go into Sprint effect, I'm probably just going to Veiler that immediately. Otherwise, I'm just waiting for Jet to shut off things like the Double Cross from coming out so they can't have a crazy combo on me. Now, Chimera. Getting rid of the fusion spell is really important. A lot of times they'll go and try to send it to grave off something like Beatrice just so they have it in rotation, or they'll try to add it back, and I'm always just going to go ahead and DD Crow it out of grave or like a belly effect to come back. You just want to cut your opponent off so many resources. The other thing that they'll do is they'll go Tau, try to reborn things like Diabels. Just make sure that you have the response with like Crow or Bell to go ahead and get rid of the target for this, because again, usually it's Diabels. Ogre onto the Appaloosa. A lot of times they're putting up an early Appaloosa, mostly not through an IP. So it is going to be susceptible to the Ghost Ogre. Ash onto the Requiem. This deck really lives and breathes off being able to get into the Fiendsmith cards right now. Being able to go sequence into Aerial Eater or into the Baphomet, like the newer one, the level 6 fusion, is kind of crazy. So any kind of negation can go onto the sequence, but the new normal summon of the deck that you just want to stop is Gazelle. Because the deck is a little bit more combo now than just fusion heavy, so you want to go ahead and stop the Gazelle as soon as possible. It's a lot better than stopping the Baphomet, because the Baphomet won't come until they absolutely need to. So if you stop them early on, a lot of times it's going to be a lot better for you. Kashtira, this one never changes. Ogre or Bell onto the Birth effect. And then you can also Ash the Planet. If they open Prosperity, you can just hit the Prosperity. Or if your opponent opens Right Saw, I'm just going to hit the Right Saw. Put your opponent on Better Havoc, because this deck bricks like crazy. It's just better off to just throw the Handtrap at it. And then any negation onto Unicorn. A lot of times right now, the variants aren't real. And if you see a Unicorn hit the board, usually it's just going to be cash. So you can go back to actually stopping the Unicorn again, because back when it was just like the Snake deck, it wasn't like super correct. But now it's just like, yeah, you stop that for sure. The target of the Blue Slug, you'll just go ahead and Crow. You'll Ogre the enemy, again, just because as someone of the arrow. You can Bell or Ash the Dive, and then any negation onto the Sea Angel, you want to cut off access to the Battle Ocean. You can also just go ahead and Ogre the Battle Ocean, it's up to you on that, but it's nice to go ahead and cut off this resource from your opponent. Snake Eye, you're going to go ahead and DD Crow or Bistral out the IP in their graveyard. If your opponent uses the effect of the Fiendsmith to come back to the board when they already have Necro Equip on board, then you can go ahead and just crow that instead too. Really nice, because your opponent doesn't have the combo to be able to get into their full combo, because usually this is going to be after you already hand trap them. So hitting the Fiendsmith out of the grave, so all they have is a Necro Equip on board, usually is going to be a pass turn. Ghost Ogre onto the field spell is always going to be really plus. Ghost Bell onto Sequence, again, just being able to cut off this resource is really nice. If my opponent opens Bonfire, I'm ashing it 100% of the time. If they go for the Snake Eye Original Sin later on, then I'll just ash that. But if they lead Bonfire, I'm just going to hit it. Any negation onto Snake Eye Ash, of course, you're going to do that. And then if you have 2 hand traps, you're just going to hit the Sequence. Melodious. Now, when the Botcha goes to the grave, you'll go ahead and just DD Crow the target of it. To Reborn, you just go ahead and get rid of it. Bell or Ash, the Ostinato, or the first movement solo. Whichever one comes first, you're just going to go ahead and stop that. And then the Ghost Ogre onto the Couplet. Of course, we want to make sure our opponent does not get to Concerto. And then any negation you have onto the Botcha, and then any residual negation you have will go onto the Refrain. Flu, I don't really need to talk about this one that much. It's pretty self-explanatory. Hit the Eagle, hit the Prosperity, and hit the map. And then if you have, like, your opponent at a weird situation where they open up the quick play banish to go ahead and search right away, I'm just going to ash that. So realistically, it's whichever one they lead in this deck, you just ash the first thing. Tenpai, just go ahead and DD Crow the target of the Biden. A lot of times, your opponent's going to try to Transcendent you in the main phase, or you can go ahead and just do this in the battle phase. Doesn't really matter as long as, again, there's no Transcendent up. But this is always going to be a really solid target for you. Ghost Ogre onto Sing and Summoning, belling the effect of the Biden, ashing the Kaiman, and then just negating the Pydra, of course. Memento, this is a deck I get asked about a lot. Any kind of negation onto the Darkblade is really, really good. You definitely want to hit the Tatsunushigo, but at the same time, I think that if your opponent leads Darkblade, you should always prioritize just negating the Darkblade and put him on. You better have the Newt. This card's very strong, though. You want to make sure that you have, like, 2 negations if possible. But I'm always hitting Darkblade first. Ash onto the Bone Party. It's kind of crazy. I feel like this deck always has the Bone Party. So if you have like Ash, Valor, then you're just going to Valor this. They chain Bone Party, chain Ash, you win the game. Bell or DD Crow, the effect of Gaddock to come back to the board. You want to make sure you clear this. Ghost Ogre, you're going to go ahead and hit the field spell. And then you also can DD Crow preemptively onto the fusion spell in their graveyard, so they can't go ahead and get another ad as well. But this is pretty straightforward against this deck. If you haven't played it as much, it's pretty resilient to a lot, but these are pretty solid spots to go ahead and make sure that the combo just stops. Yubel. So Yubel has a couple spots you really want to make sure you're aware of. Bell onto the Abominable is nice, but you can also Bell onto Squirmer, so they can go for the Vivergerous, because a lot of times you'll see your opponent bring back like the Spirit to go ahead and pop it right there, and then be able to get 2 10s on board to go to the Exceed. So this is a really, really good spot. The Ghost Ogre onto the Nightmare Pain is going to be my favorite, but you also can just go ahead and hit the Rage if it's more important to you, and then you can also just like DD Crow the Rage when they flip the Abominable. You also can Ash the Samsara Lotus, and then put any negation you got onto Spirit of Yubel. You don't want to hit the Samsara, there's too many ways to get it back, so you're just going to go ahead and Ash this to make sure it's just done, and then just negate the Spirit as much as possible. Muskets, this is a deck I also get asked about a lot. DD Crow, the Leary, the Fiendsmith cards in this deck are real because all of them are actually just like rotas and searches for the deck. So DD Crow, the Leary, Ash the Tractus, because this is low-key actually just rota for them. Also, ashing the Requiem is really nice. They really want to see their Fiendsmith cards as much as possible. Bell the Leary, Bell the Sequence. You can also Ghost Ogre any of the Musket monsters, just get them off the board. So if your opponent is greedy and they go summon Casper, activate a card, Casper effect to add, and then you ogre it, a lot of times that's just GG in the chat. If they go into Musket Max and they go the effect, if you ogre it, it's really nice just because you force them to commit another body into their board. But a lot of times too, if they go to add from their deck to their hand instead of summon, and you ogre the max, it's over. Because a lot of times you need to go max into Requiem. So just make sure you keep the Muskets off board as much as possible. The other thing too is just any negation you have onto the max, otherwise you just hit the Sequence. The last one I have for you today is going to be Mimighoul. Mimighoul is going to be Ogre or Bell onto their field spell. Just make sure you cut off as much as you can. And then also you're going to Ash the Maker. This card's absolutely just custom. It's pretty broken. And then your main priority is always going to be shutting down the Master. The Dragon's like secondary, but you want to make sure you shut down the Master. I really do hope this video helped you. I try to speed through these, but also be thorough at the same time because I want to make sure that you all get as much info as possible in as little time as possible. But I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you on the next video. Thank you all so much.